One of the fundamental challenges in each of our lives is how we stick with something through the hard times, through the frustrations, the failures, the setbacks. Virtually all meaning and accomplishment lie on the other side of such times. How do we sustain effort through challenges and over a long period? This is the land of grit and the expertise of Dr. Anджела Dъкуорт. If you're a teacher, how do you know a kid has grit? Like, what's it look like?
So what grit looks like in a school-age child, right, say late elementary school or early middle school, is a kid who, when frustrations, when setbacks, when bad grades, when screw-ups, when missed assignments happen, it's not that they're not disappointed, but they come back. The other thing, though, is this idea of really having deepening, consistent interest over time. So if you have a gritty student, that's a student who gets very interested in, the Arctic. And it's not just that they're interested for that week or that month, but, their interest deepens and matures, and maybe a year later they're still interested in that direction. And I think that is one of the goals of education, not just that our kids can do well on standardized achievement tests and learn what we've taught them, but that they develop their own particular interests, the ones that they're going to then go on to specialize in later.
What does grit and self-control lead to?
Grit and self-control are things that I study because they predict success. So grit in particular, predicting success in very challenging circumstances. Grit predicts making it out of West Point Military Academy, not only the first very hard summer where there's a sizable attrition, but also making it out all the way through the 4 years, right? So dropout at West Point is roughly 20 to 25%, and the grittier cadets are more likely to make it through. Grit predicts winning the National Spelling Bee. Grit predicts keeping your job if you're in sales, which has a turnover rate of about 50% in the first year. In a sample of thousands of Chicago public high school juniors, grit predicts graduating 1 year later as a senior. Grit actually predicts things where I think the challenge is to stay in the game, right? As Woody Allen said, 80% of success in life is showing up, and grit predicts showing up and trying hard when you're there.
Can anyone be successful without grit?
I don't know of any counterexamples to the idea that, accomplishing something very, very, very worthwhile can be done without this kind of determination in the face of adversity, and also this ability or this disposition to pursue single-mindedly a very small set of goals, as opposed to, kind of being a dilettante and being all over.
What is IQ good for predicting? What about, do grit and self-control really predict things that IQ don't? How does that really work?
In my research, grit is usually either completely unrelated to IQ or sometimes inversely related, meaning that individuals who are a little higher in IQ, on average, are slightly lower in grit. And so I worry actually about those kids who are, very able but haven't yet developed these other capacities.
Dominic describes that often as the fragile thoroughbred.
Yeah, and actually my expression for it is the fragile perfects, right? Yeah. The kids who are unblemished, right? They've never gotten less than an A+ in their life, and at some point, you're going to disappoint your supervisor, and at some point you're going to, lose the fellowship or get rejected or really screw up, right? I mean, I've made tons of mistakes, and I, need to figure out how to cry about them, but then how eventually to learn from them and how to get up the next day and keep going. And I do think that if you defer that learning experience too far in life, it becomes very, very hard to do.
How do you teach it?
How do you teach grit?
Yeah, how do you teach grit?
We're working on it. We don't know yet, really. Do we even know for sure that you can teach it? No, we don't. We know that character skills like grit and self-control are not entirely genetic. So that gives you some hope that you can teach it, but not all of experience is didactic, direct teaching. So here's where we are. This is what we're hoping will prove to be true. In particular, we're working on the idea that kids may not have accurate beliefs or understanding about practice. One, how much practice matters, right? They may know that practice matters, but when they see the student get all A's in the class, or they watch television, they see some a basketball player that, watch the footage of the Olympics, they may think, oh, well, when you look at really good performance, practice matters a little bit, where we want to tell them, no, it matters a lot. Second thing we want to show them is that practice is actually not fun, not even for people who are really at the top of their game. When experts are doing the kind of practice that makes them better, they're frequently failing, they're frequently confused, not even necessarily seeing gains for what will feel like a very long time. So teaching kids not to expect that they will be succeeding the whole time and feeling really great about themselves, actually to anticipate that, these emotions, these feelings can be pretty hard, right? And actually to reward themselves, like, oh, I just studied for half an hour and I was totally confused. Like, great, I must be doing the hardest kind of practice. The other, thing that we want to make sure kids understand about effective, deliberate practice is that there needs to be feedback. If they don't know whether they're doing the right thing or the wrong thing, whether they're studying in the right way, studying the right material, they need to be proactive in the classroom, outside of the classroom, make sure they're closing the feedback loop.
If you could create a list of 3 to 5 things that you'd want teachers thinking about or doing in their classrooms to sort of facilitate the development of the character skills like grit and self-control, what would that list look like?
The teachers could think about these character skills not just in their students' lives, right, students of whatever age, but in their own life. Self-control and grit, social intelligence, I think these are things that, we're all working on, our whole lives. And so the first thing maybe for teachers to do is to reflect on how self-control and grit and other character skills do or don't play out in ways that they're happy with in their own lives. And maybe as a second easy step is to share that with the students. You know what, yesterday I really wanted to have the cheeseburger, and I used this strategy. I asked the waiter not even to show me the menu and ordered a salad, right? So I think if teachers can think, my kids not only need to know what to do, but they need a little scaffolding. They need a little help in figuring out, how exactly they're going to go and do it. The work of Gabrielle Ettingen and Peter Gollwitzer on this particular point is really illuminating. So rather than just saying, your homework is page 36, do 1 through 10, what if the kids had to think, well, what's the homework assignment? Why am I being given this homework assignment? Well, what good thing will happen if I actually finish all this homework? Well, what's the obstacle going to be that's going to stand in the way of me doing this? And now, what's my specific plan? When and where am I going to do what? Right? And in that kind of work, it's shown that when kids are taught that skill and not just left to their own devices, they're actually better at doing things like homework, coming to school on time, etc. The fourth thing that would be helpful for teachers to think about is thinking of ways that they can encourage kids to be the teachers of their own bedroom classrooms, right? And saying like, well, we've designed this classroom this way so that you can see the board, so there aren't a lot of distractions. We have a rule in our classroom that we don't use our cell phones. Well, how can you then make a home environment that would be, equally well engineered for you to be the kind of kid that you want to be, to act in the way that you want to act?
You got 2 kids. 10 and 12.
Yeah.
How do you think about grit and helping them develop grit as a parent?
We have a rule that everyone has to do a hard thing in our family. This is really about grit. And by something that's a hard thing, it has to be something that requires deliberate practice, which means that it has to be something that requires that you're setting specific goals, that you're practicing at outside of your skill level, that you're getting feedback, and you're doing it with repetition to mastery, right? I think it sends a message that doing hard things are sort of part of our responsibility in life and in our family. And I'll tell you that there have been times where they've wanted to quit their hard thing. And we have a second rule, which is that you can quit your hard thing, but you can only quit them after the tuition payment is up, right? So if I have signed you up for a semester of track, you are going to do a semester of track, and at the end of that semester, you can make a mindful and reasoned decision about doing something else. You can't do nothing, so you have to pick something else, and you can pick whatever it is. Kids understand that they have some freedom and some say in all of this, but that they can't quit things in the middle, and they can't quit on bad days, right? So I think it sends a message that, the time to quit is when you've made a thoughtful decision, not when you got yelled at or you had to miss, a birthday party because you had a recital. So the hard thing rule is one thing that we do in our family. And the other thing is, we use language very intentionally, I think in the same way that teachers use language in a very intentional and mindful way. So when my daughters practice piano or viola and I'm listening to them, I don't simply praise the times when it sounds really good, right? Which is what I actually used to do. Like, it sounds beautiful, and you say, oh, that was so beautiful, play it for me again. Now, I do that, but I also more more often will say things like, wow, that sounds like you're really working on the hard parts. You're really doing deliberate practice. And of course, those are the parts that don't sound good, right? But you have to actually reward kids for the struggle.
Now let's look at a kid, in this case you'll hear the kid talking, and what evidence do you see that grit has been a subject at some point in the class?
On Khan Academy, I mastered points on the coordinate.
Points on a coordinate plane? And how did you know to work on that?
Because I kept getting up and looking at the post board and seeing what other skills I had to do next.
Okay. And what character strength did you show by doing that?
I think I showed grit because I think I kept getting some wrong, and then I think I didn't master it the first time, so I went over and mastered it.
Okay.
That was great. Yeah, so that young female student, I think, couldn't have said it any better, right? I saw what I was doing well, saw what I wasn't doing well, and what I wasn't doing well, I didn't, wasn't getting to mastery, and I worked on it until I did. So I'm hoping that that ability to articulate, right, to sort of self-monitor, to recognize character when you have it and recognize when you need it, and then to talk about it with others. My hope is that actually does encourage the character skills themselves, that's part of the growth.
To me, the thing that I appreciate about her articulation here is that she was able to go to the specific behaviors, because a lot of times you'll hear teachers say, well, what character, first of all they say, was that grit, right? And they'll be like, yes.
You're right.
Or
right. Their brain shuts off because it's like,
right.
you know exactly what your teacher wants, right?
Yeah, or the next level is what character strength, and then, you still sort of probably, grit, then take it to how did you know?
Right.
To, how to defend that, and then for a child to be able to say, well, here's the behaviors that let me know I was being gritty.
Yeah. The key word she said was because.
Right.
And interestingly, I noted that she said it so that she didn't finish her sentence and the teacher didn't have to even prompt her. So maybe that's the kind of classroom where kids know when you say something, you go further with a thought. So, but I think the word because was the key there.
Right. Yep.